Don't stop. I have had a theme going on with my podcast over the last 3, 4, 5 months where I've been interviewing a lot of people that have had some type of experience, or they're a psychic medium, or they believe in reincarnation, or they've had near-death experiences, or they do or have been part of a past life regression. And it's fascinating to me, just this other realm or world or whatever you want to call it that kind of exists out there. And it's changed my way of thinking about what happens when you die. And the people that I have met, and I went through a past life regression hypnosis with a woman named Myra Rath, and she did a job, and she brought me back to a different time or a different life that I had, two different lives that I had, and I remember it now like it was really part of my memory, and it just like she brought it back to the forefront of my mind. And people that talk about reincarnation, I never kind of really believed in reincarnation. I didn't believe at all that, you go to heaven, you go to hell and all that stuff. I never believed that. But I never really kind of believed in reincarnation until I started interviewing these people and getting more into it. And it makes sense. And then also whenever I took a mediumship class, because anybody can be a medium, and a psychic class I took, and I realized, like, okay, well, there are people that are on the other side. And so you don't just die and you're gone. Like, there's something that happens, like goes somewhere, or your soul or your energy or something like that. Whatever it is, like, it's when you die, you're not just gone. It's not just done. What you're living in, I think, is gone. And so I'm going to try to maybe cut down a little bit on how paranormal guests that I have, but I've just been so fascinated by it. And my guest today, actually want to do another interview with him because I love talking with him. I think he's so interesting. The way I found him is that he did this 28 questions that he answered in a video on YouTube of people that had questions from some Facebook group about reincarnation and past life regression and doing mushrooms. Like, he went through and took 28 questions and he answered them all in this video. And all his answers were he's just a fascinating guy. He has his own podcast, and his name is Ian, and I just love talking with him. And he, was brought up in a very religious home. And then he went through, 10 years of being an atheist and not believing in anything. And now he believes in reincarnation and just, he's guy, and I'm so glad I got to interview him. And I've said this before, sometimes when I meet people on my show, I'm like, I want to be this person's friend. Like, I want to end this podcast, but I want to continue to stay in touch with this person. And Ian is one of those people where I just appreciate who he is as a person. His beliefs are very similar. The way we think is very similar also. And he's just a kind person. You can just tell on the podcast, he's a truly nice guy. And I don't know, somebody that I would like to be friends with and just have him in my life going forward. So, not, we'll see. He did agree that he'd come back on my show again, and because I had so many more questions for him and different topics I wanted to cover. And I hope you enjoy the interview with Ian as much as I enjoyed talking with him, because he's really a great guy. So enjoy the episode today. Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Everything and Anything in a Bit Gay podcast. Today, I have a really amazing guest. His name is Ian Vogel. I found him as I was searching for new guests, and he answered a video about a lot of things that I'm interested in. And it was 28 questions where basically Ian went into a Facebook group and he answered these 28 afterlife questions about near-death experiences, reincarnation, spirit guides, kind of all these things that I myself love. And I have people on my podcast about that. And I wanted to invite him on. So welcome.
Zach, thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah, so I again found this video. I thought it was so well done. I think that there's a lot of questions out there that people have about near death experiences and reincarnation. And maybe you can just kind of give us an idea how you educated yourself or discovered this yourself, like the answers to some of these questions.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess before I get into the story, I like to preface things with the why. So like, why would I even go into this sort of exploration and time in personal development, so to speak? I've tried many different modalities, and I came to the realization that if there's something about our lives that we want to change or we want to improve or something that we want to move away from, the first thing is to gain awareness about the situation, to really understand what it is that we want to change about our lives or that we want to improve. And I realized that there were many patterns in my life and different behaviors that I just was ready to move on from, but they kept, no matter what I did, they would continue to reoccur and pop up over and over again. And that was about the time when I got into learning more about my past lives. And through that, I was really able to gain a deeper understanding and the root causes of some of the things in my life that I was trying to change and trying to grow out of, and like often like old wounds that I was trying to heal, like behavioral patterns that I was trying to adjust.
What was an old wound that you were trying to heal?
A lot of what came around for is just self-acceptance.
Okay.
And like becoming more comfortable and more confident in my own skin.
Okay.
For example, I could live in a 6 by 6 foot room with nothing on the walls and no furniture. Like I like to sleep on the ground. I don't like sleeping on beds, but I've always been that way, and I felt self-conscious about that. And like people would come over to my apartment, and they'd be like, your walls are completely bare. You don't have any furniture. You have one knife, one cup. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, this is not normal.
Yeah.
And there were multiple things throughout my life where I just like, I don't know, this is just the way that I am. And through exploring my past lives and delving deeper into some of the experiences that I had on incarnation, it really started to paint a broader and more complete picture of who I am and why I am the way that I am. The reason I'm okay with eating beans and rice every single day and being totally cool with that, whereas it drives my partner crazy, is that I'm a monk for many incarnations and many lifetimes, and living in a small room with nothing on the walls, that just kind of became my comfort zone. And I was just always okay with that. And I actually gravitate towards that. And so by learning more about why I am the way that I am, I just became more accepting of myself and loving towards myself. And when I had that realization for me, I realized like, oh, everybody is going through this on some level in one way or another. So it also helped me to develop more compassion for exhibiting behaviors and living out patterns that didn't necessarily serve them. I realized like, you know what? They're not choosing to do this very likely. This is something that is just a remnants of something that they experienced prior, and they're working through it still.
So what do you think? Well, first of all, I want to go back. Do you and your partner live together?
Yeah.
And do you still have that same like, one for or have you like you're not as simplified as before the two of you?
Yeah, I mean, I was able to find a happy medium.
Okay.
And figure out what works for me. And like, for instance, I still sleep on the floor. She sleeps in a bed. I sleep on the floor. Yeah, I still sleep on the floor because for one, I'm very sensitive. So I find that when I'm in really close physical proximity with somebody, the line and the boundary of where I end and the other person begins starts to get kind of blurry.
Okay.
Like, so for example, I could and be kind of weirded out or just have this like vibe, this energy that I don't like. What is this? I feel weird.
So you kind of grabbed her energy in a way?
Or like I'll say like, man, I don't know. I must have slept funny or I slept on my neck weird. She's like, yeah, I had this crazy dream about all this and this. I was like, oh, that is why I'm funky this morning. It wasn't actually me. It was whatever you were experiencing. I was picking up on it kind of peripherally.
Yeah.
And, when it comes to not sleeping in the same bed, like there were situations in the past where I would have forced myself to do necessarily on a deep level I wasn't really in alignment with.
Okay.
So understanding that, there is a part of me that just feels more comfortable and I just feel healthier and just feel better when I sleep on the floor. I no longer am trying to fit myself in situations that don't necessarily serve me. It's helped me to be more aware of what really works for me and to say, you know what, like it's okay if we sleep in different beds or if I have my own sleeping situation, because that's going to make me more productive and more present throughout the day. And like understanding of how to manage myself and am more willing to say yes when I need to say yes and say no when something isn't in alignment with my deeper desires.
Yeah. So me and my husband actually sleep in separate beds, and it's because I'm a sleeper and he can sleep. He could sleep like in the middle of a highway and sleep, and he's so loud and moves around so much. So, and I need quiet. I need it dark. I need it cold. We need different environments. So I get sleeping like alone. I think it's know that our couples are actually sleeping separately now because just how people have bad sleeping patterns. So tell me, I think that the whole thing where we kind of started the beginning where you were interested in kind of past and you talked about you were a monk couple of times. How did you kind of discover how to figure out your past life regression? And I'll just start that off by also saying I had a woman named Myra Rath who actually took me through my past lives. And I don't know, I don't want to say I didn't, I don't want to say, I always believe that there's a chance for everything. But now that she has done this, it's like a memory that she just brought back to me that was always there and that I just now remember. And the past lives that she brought me back, we only had an hour, so she only brought me to 2 or 3. Nothing that I never would have expected myself to be. And so tell me how you kind of figured out how to do this for yourself.
So since I was little, I was having these experiences that it became abundantly clear to me at a certain point that the people around the same experience that I was having.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt really weird. Like I felt like there was something wrong with me, or like that I was doing something wrong. Like there was something inherently wrong with me. And I never really had the context. This was never something that my family ever talked about. This was just something I didn't even learn about until well later on in life. And I came to realize later on, I was like, oh, all of those different experiences. At one point, it just clicked. I was like, okay, everything just started to make sense. I was having these recollections or picking up on things that resonated with a past life.
Yeah.
I maybe didn't have a vision or I didn't have something like really profound happening, but I was picking up on something that I already knew on a deep, consciously aware of from this life.
Yeah.
And Plato has actually made up this word called anamnesis. And the Greek word anamnesis is translated to English as the process of So it's not exactly remembering, but you're unforgetting. So it's a process. And I think many people, whether or not they know exactly what's happening, are having these flashes or these glimpses. Sometimes people
Yep.
are having these experiences and they're not aware that, oh, this is just something peeking through, or this experience or this person or whatever is happening at that moment is resonating really strongly with something that happened in a past life. And I think most, especially now, more and more so, people are starting to tune into that and become aware of it. But these, to answer your question, I was having just little glimpses here and there throughout my childhood, and they only became more and more apparent. Like a freshman in high school, I wrote a story about being lost on a beach. And it had nothing to do with my living situation. It was just in a creative writing class.
Okay.
Later come to find out that, no, actually that happened to me in a past life. And for example, I was planting flowers around my house one spring, and my mom came over with a bunch of gladiolus bulbs, and she said, these were your grandpa's favorite, and he died when I was very young, and I barely knew him.
Yeah.
And I had this, those were his favorite, and it wasn't a thought; it came from somewhere else, and I just paused for a moment. It's like, okay, there's no way that I could have known that. Yeah. I'd never heard that before. There's no conscious way that I could have known that, but I knew it to be true. The sun is going to come up tomorrow, and that there's oxygen entering my lungs. Like, it was like immediately, it's like, that's true. It's like, wait a second, where did that come from? So there's these little breadcrumbs throughout my life. And it wasn't until later on, when I started working with psychedelics very that I came to realize, like, okay, and throughout my explorations with both ayahuasca and psilocybin mushrooms, I was being shown at different times and in different circumstances scenes from past lives. And that's really when things started to click. Like, okay, like they almost have a flavor to them. Like, it's really hard to explain, but there's a certain intangible quality when I have a past life remembrance start to bubble up that's closer to the surface. It's like, okay, there's something resonant that came from beyond this life that I'm close to, or this situation is similar to that, and now I can recognize it. But when I started really delving into and becoming consciously aware of the past life experience, and that it was an absolutely real phenomenon, and that I had been experiencing it my whole life, when I started to experience them regularly through working with psychedelics.
Interesting. And so let me just, how do you bring yourself back, though, to see your past life progress? So whenever I did it, I had someone that hypnotized me, and she brought me back. I guess we spent like an hour and a half kind of doing it. How are you doing it? Are you doing it alone, or are you having somebody do it for you?
So there's multiple different ways and different pathways to get there, so to speak. The way that I think about it is that, it's like a path. And the more you walk down it, the more accustomed you get to walking down that path, the better you know it, the easier it gets to walk. So for me now, it happens very easily, and I can do self-guided past life regression hypnosis if I want, and almost 100% of have an experience. And you're set in setting, like how you're feeling emotionally, and if you're in a calm and relaxed environment plays a lot into that. But there's self-guided just tracks that you can listen to. There's plenty of them out there on YouTube, named Dr. Brian Weiss, who wrote the book Many Lives, Many Masters, who is kind of a pioneer in the field of past life regression hypnosis. He has a 35 minutes recorded thing recorded video you could access on YouTube. entry point for me to where when I started doing it really intentionally and regularly was just using a video that I found on YouTube.
And did it work for you the first time you did it?
Worked
Wow.
for me the first time. And I think I just have a bit of a predilection to be able to access that space. I don't know if it's more easily, but it's a little bit more accessible to me.
Yeah.
I know some people it takes a few tries, but I've recommended that video to multiple people, and almost without a doubt, people will, after they try it, they'll come back to me and say, deep into a past life in a really detailed way, but they'll say, you know what, like it confirmed something, or like, it helped me to realize something, or it felt true.
Yeah.
So the self-guided hypnosis sessions and recordings is one way. You can also work with somebody. There's a couple of different modalities. QHHT, which is the modality developed by Dolores Cannon, quantum hypnosis healing technique. And there's some different varieties of that are named differently. BHQ, Beyond Quantum Healing. People have just developed their own style and their kind of own funky way to do it. At this point, I'm facilitating these past life regression hypnosis sessions with people. So I kind of have my own spin on it. And I trust that the people who are meant to work with me will, and people will at their own time find the right avenue to begin to walk that path on their own.
So whenever I did mine, one thing I was a farmer in Oklahoma, which was not anything I would have kind of said. I was married to a woman. I had 2 kids. Was actually my husband in the past life. And the woman that did my past life regression, she basically said a lot of times the people that are in your life kind of follow you through your other lives. Have you noticed that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And through doing the past life regression hypnosis and working with psychedelics, I've come to identify different people in my life, and I've been able to see different relationships that we've had and different relationship dynamics that we've inhabited and have held for each other in different lifetimes. And it's super fast. I have a memory of one of my most recent past lives of my current mother in this life sitting on my knee as my grandchild shortly after she was born. Yeah, I was my mother's paternal grandfather. So I can remember my knee and just like oogling at me.
And we'll be right back. Okay, and now back to the show. What was the weirdest kind of past life that you've had, or weird? And when I say weird, I mean, maybe it's not weird to you, but what's probably the most strangest? And I'll give you an example. For me, mine was, I didn't see who I was. I just seen the environment that I was around, and I was not on this planet Earth. And this sounds crazy probably to some people, but I was not. The water was like a purplish pink. It was not like, it was somewhere not here. Again, I didn't see what I looked like, but I was sitting like kind of on this weird, funky rock, watching the water. Everything was very purplish and pinkish and just not at all. So have you had anything like that where it's been totally out of this world, I'll say?
Yeah, there are 2 past lives that I remember that are kind of similar to what you're explaining.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I remember seeing Earth for the first time from a spaceship.
Wow.
And I was not in a human body. I had 4 fingers and 3, and I was in more of a reptilian kind of a body. And this came up in a session that I did with somebody, in a QHHT session, where I was working with somebody and they brought me back. And even though I do have the ability to do this self-guided hypnosis, I found that working with somebody, fully let go, and I've been able to get more detail and have kind of more immersive experiences when it's being led by somebody.
Yeah.
But in that circumstance, I was able to kind of see the backstory and learn about how it came to be, how I came to planet Earth. And it was fascinating. I actually recorded a video on my YouTube channel. I think it's called "Coming to Earth for the First Time" or the first time seeing Earth. And to what you said, I also have a past life memory, and it was and this was one of the first things that ever came to me. Deep into it, I did a past life regression on myself, and smoke clears, and I'm sitting on a beach. I'm meditating on a beach. There's 2 moons in the sky. The plants behind me are purplish, kind of like a sheen beetles, kind of how they have that green and purple luster. And I'm sitting on the beach, and I'm looking out over water, and I get the sense that there is an animal walking down the beach towards me, and it's almost like a dinosaur. It's about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, like the size of a car, and it looks like a horned toad. So it's got like a flat body, and it's got kind of little little horns and claws, and it's walking towards. And I know that this thing is looking for its lunch. It is very dangerous. And somehow in this past life, I had some telepathic abilities. So I was able to kind of imprint like a vision in its head. So when it walked past me, bush. I was able to like camouflage myself somehow.
Yeah.
And this big like creepy crawly coming down the beach looking for something that's been washed up to eat for dinner. He just walked right past me. But I definitely was not on Earth in that life.
Do you know what you look like?
Yeah. Well, I was like humanoid and like kind of muscular, and I had dreadlocks. The civilization that I lived in, it was almost like the Avatar people. Like we were one with nature. We did have some technology, but it was very much, and we just lived harmonious with nature. And so kind of loincloths and very much like Avatar people.
Yeah. Sounds like a better life than what we have here, though. Actually, so.
It was interesting. It was, and I've found that so fascinating, and I've gone back to explore just to like, what is that all about?
Yeah.
And
so can you go back to a specific past life once you've gone there already?
Yeah, yes, you can. And I typically don't. It's the way that I kind of perceive it. It's like watching a movie over again. I'm not somebody who goes back and free watches movies over and over and over again. Like once I watch it, I move on to something else. So that's kind of how I perceive it. And like I was able to pick up some more details, but after that, the first time I went there, I kind of had a gist or what it was all about.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that might have been a more peaceful existence than we experience now. And when I went back, I realized and like dug into a little bit more, I realized that I was a kind of like a shaman or a medicine man type. I lived on the outskirts of the community, and people would seek me out when they had an issue of some sort, whether the loss of a loved one or some sort of traumatic incident or something was going on in their life that they needed help with.
Yeah.
Almost like a medicine man or a shaman that somebody would go into the jungle to see. And I realized like, oh, wow, people in that community had the same kind of problems that we have in this life. Just looks a little different, a little different context, but we're all spirits and we're all souls going on a journey through different lifetimes. And it's all about learning new lessons. And it doesn't matter which meat suit I'm in or which incarnation I'm in.
Yeah.
There's always challenges and always some sort of obstacle or lesson to learn.
What religion, did you have a religion growing up?
I grew up in a Protestant Christian family.
Okay.
My parents weren't super into it, but my aunts and my grandmother was. So I was brought to church quite a bit, and I did not resonate with the Protestant church, like having to stand up and read the hymnals
Yeah.
and sing from the hymnals. And it was a very, like, the community that I grew up in is very conservative white folks. And like, I just didn't resonate with that form of connecting spirit. And later on, I felt really um, like like God didn't love me. I felt like there was something really wrong with me because I kind of veered away from this path that my family wanted me to go on. Later on, through some of my experiences, understanding more about my history, my deep history, and some of the past lives that I've had, and in my experience with facilitating psychedelic ceremonies, like I came to realize, like, no, like my own expression of spirituality is much more uh, like a traditional South American indigenous
Mhm.
style of connecting with spirit, and that's through song and dance and not standing in front of a pew
Yeah, yeah.
singing out of a hymnal, but more of an active participatory sort of expression. So that was another wound that I was able to terms with and helped understand and heal was this, like, I think often it's called religious trauma from a religious upbringing. I was able to find peace with my own path and to recognize and realize, like, there was never anything wrong with me. I was just out of place because, in a sense, I was out of place from
Yeah.
these different experiences that I really resonated with on a much deeper level.
What's your feeling about, like, God and religion now?
I think every religion has truth in it, and that the many religions or spiritual paths that people embark on here on Earth, I don't think any of them are 100%.
Yeah.
And I think people resonate with different teachings and different religions, you know, on one sense because they've been following that teaching or
Yeah.
that style of teaching or that particular guru or that particular lineage for potentially many lifetimes, and that's just what's comfortable for them. So I think that there are many at the top of the mountain, and we're all, as Ram Dass said, we're all walking each other home.
Yeah.
Like, all paths lead to the same ultimate understanding that we are all one. We're all just fractals and different expressions of one larger consciousness. From my point of view, there is only one consciousness. There is only one thing. And we're just, I always think of it as like a disco ball.
Yeah.
Like, there's on a disco ball, there's many different individual little mirrors that are reflecting light outwardly onto a bigger landscape. That's what we're doing. And the two little mirrors on the disco ball, they might look at each other and think, hey, you're different from me. But from an, a perspective, from a
Yeah.
broader perspective, it's like, okay, yeah, that's almost a technicality, though. It's like you're basically the same thing. You just have a slightly different, and you're really part of a larger whole. And
Mhm.
I think part of our soul's growth and evolution is that we're learning lessons that are constantly moving us in the direction of an understanding that on a deep level we're all the same.
Yeah, so I because I grew up in a until I was, I don't know, 8 or 9, grew up in a my grandfather was very religious. He was Church of God, Southern Baptist. It was very, religious, but then when we moved from Illinois to Florida and we got away from my grandfather where he didn't live, my dad basically said, "You can either go to church, continue doing whatever, or you don't have to." Like, he basically said 'cause he was he was restricted from doing certain things, like going to a prom, doing things like that when he was growing up because his father was so religious and for it. So he did not at all enforce that on me and my brother. And so I chose not to go because I knew something wasn't there for me. It didn't feel right. And it wasn't even like I didn't know why I was gay at that point. I was 8 or 9. So I mean, I know some people are like, oh, I've known since I was born, but I didn't. at that point. And so I had nothing to do with sexuality or anything. I just didn't feel like it made sense to me. And I'd ask my mom, I'm like, how was there dinosaurs and there was Adam and Eve first, they say, but the dinosaurs were here first. Like it doesn't make sense. Like I would really like question her on these things. And she was like, "Oh, well, why don't you call your grandfather?" I mean, he never really like gave a real kind of good answer that satisfied me. So I'm not even sure where I was going with this, telling you this, but that's kind of how that's how I felt about religion. But what I was going to ask you is that I feel like a lot of people now, you read the statistics and stuff, and less people are now going to churches and temples and things. There's less religious people in the world than there was, and a lot of uh, and I think that maybe it's because they can explore and they can build their own, they can just like make up their own mind based on the research they have. Because before, what was it that I had growing up? I had encyclopedias. Encyclopedias didn't talk about reincarnation or any of that stuff. It was talking about the history of what's already occurred. So now we have access to all and stuff, like talking about the first time you came to Earth. Imagine having that when you were growing up. I mean, it would have really probably changed your perception of things. I mean, do you think that people are just becoming more smarter because of all the technology we have and being able to make up their or do you think it's people's imaginations are just kind of going off? Because sometimes I'm like, is it my imagination that I just like is so creative that I just make this shit up in my head? Or is it that I'm really like educating myself and like going to videos like yours and go and doing all this research online and meeting other guests that I have, like Chris Cannon videos. Like I watched a million of them because I think it resonates with me in so many ways. So what is your thoughts on like why do you think that more people are choosing, you know, to not follow that same path of religion that maybe you or I grew up with?
Yeah, I think you touched on things there. And on a tiny side note, that little story you talked about, asking the question about Adam and Eve and the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
I recently was going through some old boxes and I found a coloring book that my grandmother gave me when I was little, and it has Adam and Eve riding and these biblical figures with dinosaurs. So maybe that's one potential possible explanation to it. Kind of funny, but
yeah.
To answer your question, I think on are having the ability to access more knowledge. We have the internet. We have the ability to seek out different teachers and teachings and just much more access to information. So before, where people take what they were given and hope that it was for the best and really learn how to hone their belief, even though things may not have made logical sense, they might not have had the tools or any way to refute the things that didn't make sense to them. So they just, on a certain, accept it and trust. And I believe that in situations like that, we're being like those things happen because we're learning a lesson about faith and learning how to trust. And so I don't believe that necessarily that experiences that maybe don't resonate or maybe are challenging to get through, I don't believe that they're inherently damaging, but I do believe that even the most challenging experiences provide opportunities for us to do that deeper reflection and to come into greater alignment.
We'll be right back. Okay, now back to the show. When you think about reincarnation, how many times do you think, do you think there's a number of times that we continuously come back, or do you think it's infinite, or do we make a decision when we don't want to come back anymore? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Don't think it's infinite, but I think it's a lot more than most people think. It's hard to even put a number to it, and we're all at different stages. We've all had different amounts of incarnations, but to my reckoning, hundreds and if not thousands and even, you know, incarnating as trees and animals. Like there's the soul shard that is Zach. In order to get to Zach, there were many human incarnations, and then incarnations before that were preparing you. That's preparing you to be Zach now. That's preparing you to be, you know, whoever you're going to be in the future. The version of yourself that's no longer Zach in a different body, but still maintains the same soul essence. So, for example, Dolores Cannon, somebody asked her, and they asked if we're animals, and she said if we can be reincarnated as animals, and she said, well, not really. Like we've kind of moved beyond that. Like once you get to high school, there's no reason to repeat first and second grade.
Yeah,
and animals that are with people, and this really resonated with me. Animals in the jungle that don't have any interaction with people are going to be a little bit or somewhat less spiritually evolved than, for example, a black lab or a golden retriever. The animals that are in contact with humans, the fact that they're in such close proximity to conscious aware beings, and one of the drivers of spiritual evolution is love. Mm-hmm. So being loved by a human really accelerates that animal's trajectory and spiritual evolution and gets them closer to the point where they can take a human incarnation. So it's like, it's all, and there are many incarnations, and it's all kind of one long continuous process of learning and growing.
Yeah. Don't you wish that, this is what I wish. So when my father died, my mother she grieved for 10 years, like literally. She was so sad for 10 years. And I didn't want to, she knows how I feel about religion. Like I don't believe in religion the way that traditional religion is. And I wanted her just to understand somehow that one day she will be back with my dad, but it's not necessarily that she's going to be an angel in heaven with him or whatever. That's not what it is. And until I took this mediumship psychic class, and whenever I started talking to her about the things that I was with spirit and stuff, I feel like something clicked with her where she like understood that one day, like she will be with him, but it's not the same way that she thinks. Not that she would admit that now, because I've like challenged my mom on religion so many times. Like, Mom, do you really believe there's a God the way to it? And I've stopped doing that because I want her to believe in whatever she wants to believe in. But I just think that if people really like understood this or like had a more open mind about it, they would realize it's not as scary to die. Not that I want to die, but it's just like I'm not to this. I'm not scared to die like I was maybe 5 years ago or whatever. So I don't know if that makes sense, but because I think 5 years ago, maybe I thought, okay, you die, you go in the ground, that's it, you're dead, your life is over, you never, you're done. And now I believe in reincarnation. So I know that there's going to be more. This is just like one chapter, and you'll get to kind of go back and do things with everyone again in a different way. So I just wish more people thought like that.
Yeah, I mean, so for me personally, after that, my grandfather, 13 years old, and he was deeply devout, and he was a big part of the church, and I could not wrap my head around, I just couldn't come to terms with, if there was a God, how did he take my grandfather this way? And my grandfather died a sudden, very unexpected accident. It was a shock to the whole family. And I could not, I just couldn't make it make sense in my head. So I basically, from that point forward, from the time I was 15 until the age of 25, I was a devout, strict, almost militant atheist. I believed that if I couldn't touch it, if I couldn't measure it, it wasn't real. So I was very far on the other end of the spectrum for a whole decade of my life.
Yeah.
You couldn't talk to me about Jesus. You couldn't talk to me about spirits. hear it. Don't waste my time. That was my mindset. And I think it was really important for me to have that experience and that juxtaposition of very strong beliefs on one side of the spectrum to having a near-death experience and having to really come to terms with the fact that this strongly held belief of mine that there was no afterlife, there was no God, was completely wrong. And it's like, I just had to eat some humble pie and like really evaluate why I believed what I believed. And it helped me loosen up some of the grip that I held so strongly to certain beliefs. And looking back at it now, there is nothing you could have said to me that would have changed my mind. I had to personally almost die to have that wake up experience. And I believe we're to a certain extent. And I pray that people don't have to go through the same sort of like really intense experience that I went through to actually, have that wake up call.
Yeah.
But some people do. And it is, it's tempting to like ask those prodding questions and to kind of try to get people to open up and broaden their perspective and see things a little bit differently. And I've tried to do that so many times. And at a certain point, it's like, man, the best thing I can do, I realized, is just, So if somebody in our community or a family member or somebody passes away, I never apologize. Like usually when somebody dies, often people say, "Oh, I'm so sorry," or "I'm so sorry for your loss," and I never use that language. And I was like, man, what was your favorite memory of that person? Or oh, I bet so and so is in a very peaceful place with all of their relatives up in heaven with God, and in that place where they're no longer experiencing pain and they're just smiling down on us. I just try to, because I've been so frustrated by people who they just were not willing to kind of open up and look at things a little differently. And I've gotten much better results when I can just be authentically myself and say, well, I bet so-and-so, especially if they lived a long life, it's like, man, they're really enjoying time with their relatives. And it's been an amazing experience for them to reunite with God or, with their extended family up in heaven.
Yeah. So, Ian, thank you so much for being on. There's so many, I have literally probably about 50 more questions I wanted to ask. Have you back at some point in the near future, because I would love to hear about your near-death experience. There's so many more things. I would love to go through your video a little bit with you and explore a little bit more your 28 questions that you asked, because anybody that hasn't seen that, they definitely should watch it. And you have your own podcast. I'd let everybody know about it. It's called Alternative Timelines. And is it on all podcast platforms?
Yeah, all podcast platforms. It's on YouTube, anywhere where your pods are cast.
Okay, sounds good. And then you also have a website, alternativetimelines.co. And I will put this to his podcast, Ian's podcast, and his website in the description of this video or the podcast that you're listening to. And go and do it. Ian does past life regression. So if you're interested in doing that, reach out to him and he can help you kind of get through that. And like I said, I did it. I think it's an amazing. It just opens your mind to other things that you never maybe thought about before, is the way I can explain it. And it kind of brought me to a whole different level. So you were an amazing guest, and thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it, and I hope you'll come back.
Oh, absolutely, Zach. Anytime. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. Be sure to subscribe, and don't forget to go to Ian's podcast and subscribe to his podcast as well. Thanks, everybody, for listening.